Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another version of the Memories of Plymouth. This 9-year program, 9 years? Yeah, it's been 9 years since we started this program. Our intent from the very beginning, our goal from the beginning was to bring people here from Plymouth and the surrounding areas so they had an opportunity to share their stories, their memories. For some of them, they were born here, others not. Could have been educated here, had a business in the area, had worked in a business, I should say, in the area. But regardless, when we interview the people, they always seem to have the same similar comments. They loved living here. And we have another person visiting us today. And I'm looking to my left. I hope that's okay with them. It must be. And, sir, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
My name is Art Pease. I grew up in Orford, actually East Orford, and went to UNH, became a social studies teacher, taught for 3 years up at White Mountains Regional in Lancaster, and then came to Lebanon in 1971 to teach at the high school, and was there for 36 years, till I retired in 2007, and we've lived in Lebanon ever since.
Ooh. When were you actually born? Should we tell the audience that?
Oh, all right.
Okay. Do it.
October 1946.
1946. Okay. 1946. You got it.
I have always said that if my parents were hippies, my name would have been Rowan, because Dad always said I was second crop. And if you know, as a farmer, Rowan is the second crop of hay.
Oh my gosh.
My folks were 40 when I was born.
Oh my gosh.
I was an oops.
I'm not sure it's an oops. I'm sure it was purposely strategic. All right. So you've been in the area still quite some time.
Oh yeah. Oh,
That's great.
We never came to Plymouth much, but you know, my mother got her eyeglasses down here in Plymouth, and they came to Plymouth sometimes. Was it Shanker? No, who was the McIver?
No, McIver I thought was a doctor, but not of.
Okay. Well, I mean, I've seen stuff in her diaries about coming to Plymouth to get her eyeglasses.
Oh, that's interesting. On the main street, it would have been Prue was one of them. Off here was Prue. Who else did we have, people? This is when you want to have a call-in.
Yeah.
Because we'd have a lot of people.
You say Prue. I'm pretty sure that his son, Bob, was the one who was the principal at Lebanon Junior High for a long time, and I knew pretty well.
Whoa.
I'm pretty sure, lived in Ashland. I'm pretty sure of that.
See what happens when you start to chat with somebody? There's a connection there somehow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Let's see. Education. Just a little bit about your education. Okay. Elementary, high school?
Well, in Orford, there was one. I went to elementary school in Orford, went out to the school building that's now the town office. And then went to Orford High School. There at that point, it was in the old academy building, which had been built in the 1850s. And the building, the year before I started, there was a building that we always called Memorial Hall. It had a classroom and a kitchen and a gym, with a tile floor, the whole thing, but pretty neat for us. So I graduated there in '64 and went to UNH. Knew from probably the time I was a sophomore in high school, I wanted to be a high school history teacher and coach. Why I didn't go to Plymouth, I'm not sure. Whether I wanted to get a little farther away, I don't know. But anyway, I went to UNH, had a good education there, and ended up working for 3 years on a turkey farm down in East Kingston, and that put me through school.
At the same time, you're going to school.
Oh yeah, well, so I worked 2 days a week, although. Between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we generally worked both weekend days, and we did everything from inseminating to killing and the whole business. They never let me really cut up the turkeys. I had to cut up the giblets.
Did it bother you once you have gone through that to eat turkey?
No.
Okay. All right.
Particularly because Mrs. Levis was a hell of a cook, and sometimes we'd have turkey pie, we'd have turkey.
Oh, that's great. That's
great.
No,
I like turkey. So then I got a job teaching up at White Mountains Regional I always say Lancaster. The school is actually in Whitefield, but it's for Lancaster, Whitefield, Twin Mountain, Jefferson, and anyway, it's a regional school. It's still there. And I taught there for 3 years, and then came down to Lebanon to teach, and was there for 36 years.
36 years. And what grades?
high school. And
school.
I was American history, so I taught basically U.S. history and government.
Okay.
Freshmen and sophomores. So I started teaching, one of the courses I taught was Lebanon history. We had all 9-week courses when I first started. And I didn't know much about Lebanon. I think I had been to Lebanon twice, but at that time, even though I lived just in Orford. But the person before me, Dave Miller, had collected a lot of materials, and I began collecting them. And so taught that, I think one year I taught that course 14 times. So out of 20 times, and you had a lot of kids. And that was the kind of thing that it was, in those days, everybody was together. We weren't graded. We were graded, but I mean it was soup to nuts, from the kid that was a special ed kid to the one of my favorite stories of a kid getting a teacher back. So we take 11 so it's 2 or 3 weeks in, and Maggie Baker, bright girl.
One of your students.
One of my students. Oh yeah. So we had an essay. So she wrote, the essay, and she got at the bottom, and she had to write a few more words. So she wrote up the side of the page. Great essay, answer to this. And so I said to her, I put a note on it saying, my Aunt Vernie does that on postcards, and she did. Vernie Burnham from West Romney. So Maggie probably just smiled. I didn't think anything about it. Come the next exam, a few weeks, she writes up the side, across the top, down the other side. Well, I didn't know enough to shut my mouth. I made some other comment, I don't know what. Come the final exam, they had one question. I had no idea what it was. God, I wish I kept her paper. And a full sheet of paper. Yeah. She started in the middle and wrote around and filled that paper. I bet it took me 20 minutes to read it. I didn't dare not to, because I thought she might put something in just to make sure I had read it.
I'm wondering, what did she end up doing as her primary occupation?
She was a teacher for a while.
Was she?
And I was in probably 20 years after that. I was down in Exeter doing a workshop for the English and social studies teachers. And so I knew she had been there. She wasn't there then, but I said, now, I bet some of you here know Maggie Baker. They looked around. How does he know that? Turns out she was done, but her husband was in the audience.
Oh my gosh! That's neat. That's really neat.
So it was fun. I began to learn about Lebanon history, and I really didn't do much collecting until, I guess, maybe about the time I retired. And I began collecting old postcards, Lebanon and Orford. Well, at first I thought, well, there won't be many. And I remember talking to somebody at a postcard show, a man from Brookline, New Hampshire. And he said, he says, I've got something like 600 Brookline. And I'm thinking to myself, that's a bunch of hooey. A little place like Brookline. Well, I've got 850 Lebanon, different ones.
Wow.
And about 350 Orford.
How many years?
Well, from the 1870s, I mean, most of them are the 1890s up through the 50s. I mean, really more the 40s, because they stopped making the postcards. And then what I began to do after that is I began to buy old postcards and send them to people. So I'd send them either where they grew up or where they live now. And I began sending them to grandsons. For a while there, for several years, I sent every 2 weeks, I'd send one to one of the grandsons. I don't have any idea what probably when they were young, they enjoyed getting something from Grandpa. After that, it was probably less interesting, but I finally dropped down to once a month because I ran out of cards. I probably sent some of them 2 or 3 times anyway. But
I'm going to go backwards. As a young person, what was your very first job that you can recollect, whether you got paid or not paid?
Oh, that would be relatively easy. It was filling the wood box. So I grew up on a small farm in East Orford, and we heated with wood. And so probably from the time I was, I know how old I was. I was, 53. I would have been 6.5. And my youngest brother on the farm left to go in the Air Force. I had 3 older brothers, and so and once he left, it was my job to fill the wood box.
Wow.
Well, maybe before then I may have been feeding the calves. I don't remember for sure, but I might well have been.
And how many calves did you have?
Oh, well, we milked 21, 2, 3 cattle. So we had probably 50 head. So we'd have 6 or 8 calves.
So large. That's a large
Oh
area,
yeah. Well,
isn't it?
and no, not for that. Not of course
then.
now it's nothing.
Okay.
But then it was a decent size. You know, we could make a living, and my middle brother worked on the farm. So basically, it supported us. By that time, it was just me at home, and then Gerald and his family. Of course, I also shoveled a lot of on the farm.
Excuse me? Excuse me?
You've heard that.
I'm going to find out if he can...
Yeah. But you know, it was the farm chores, and frankly, the only thing I really enjoyed on the farm was sugaring. Maple sugaring. You know, it was work, but it was also fun. There was often people around, and one of the times I was out. I was usually carrying the buckets and the pails when you put them first on buckets and covers. Well, this one time, for some reason, my brother always board the spiles. So he'd go along. So I'm going along, and every hole I put a spile in it. So I go along. I look up ahead of me. He's standing there laughing. Well, he'd bored a hole in a beech tree, and I just put a spile in it. I pay any time. I look. I say, "Hey, if it's got a hole in it, it's getting a spile."
Okay.
But so I enjoyed that, but I didn't. I was more interested in reading than I was in anything else. So I couldn't wait to get away from the farm. As I've gotten older, I've realized I learned some lessons from growing up on the farm that I certainly didn't appreciate then.
1, 2, 3. Lessons.
Lessons? Well,
yeah. Can you get that?
Do your best. Do what you can do.
Okay.
Finish a job. Cousin and I one time we were sent up to the back side of the farm to pick blueberries. Had a blueberry patch.
Oh.
Well, we knew that Uncle Bill, who had a cabin up there, had an outhouse out there. Had some interesting magazines out in the outhouse. So what we did is we took a bunch of leaves and put them in the bottom of the 5-pound peanut butter pails that you picked in. You know, about yay big.
Okay.
And filled them maybe half full of blueberries and half full of leaves. And we went up and spent some time in the outhouse. How we didn't think we were going to get caught, I have no idea. Got home, got caught, had to go back up and fill the whole thing up again.
Jeez.
But and you know, just the idea of I think the other thing about that farm was family. The farm had been in the family since 1866. My grandmother's father moved there. She was born there. My grandmother and grandfather moved there in 1899. He had been up in Franconia working for his father for a few years, and the family story was that Grandpa Sherbin, great grandpa, his second wife had died a few years before, and so he said to Grammy and Grandpa, "Well, if you'll come and take care of me, you live with me on the farm, I'll give you the farm." Well, so that's what I always figured the story was. He lived another 10, 11 years. Look at the deed, and the deed says $1,000. I'm betting no money ever changed hands. Grammy and Grandpa certainly didn't have $1,000. Why that was ever put in there, I have no idea. But then in 1938, my grandfather had died at, age 62 in 1925, when my father was 19.
Wow.
1938, my grandmother deeded the farm to Dad, and it said, and I've seen this in other deeds, I forgot how it said, but something like in recognition of the love and affection for my son. It says right in the deed. And as I say, I've seen that in other deeds, that wording. So, Dad was right there, and we had, as I say, I had 3 older brothers, and they all worked on the farm. And then by the time I came along, Gerald and Dad were doing it. We had Holstein cattle, and by that time we pretty much had a baler, although I can remember when we had loose hay, but just sort of in the middle of that, I remembered when we didn't have a tractor, and in the winter we logged for somebody, and partly to get our own wood, but we also was a neighbor that we logged with for years, and so I used the horses some, just twitching. A lot of people may not hear that term, but it's basically hauling single logs out of the woods with one horse.
Twitching.
TWITCH, twitching logs. And we had this one horse one time, Baldy. He had been a pulling horse. He'd been a champion New England pulling horse. and Dad had a fellow that he sold cattle to for years and years, Sam Chickering from Westmoreland. And Sam would arrange to help Dad out with things, so he gave him Baldy as Baldy got too old to pull. And Dad at first wasn't sure he wanted him because I was 13, 14, 15, and he didn't know how he would be. A pulling horse generally goes when they want, so I wasn't sure, but he decided to take him.
He has his own mind.
Well, he's not necessarily, he's going to be a little nervous maybe, and you're hooking him up, you don't know what he's going to, never had a problem. I would twitch single logs with Baldy, go out and hook up to a log, hook on a log, have the whipple tree there and hook him on, back up, come back, Baldy, oh, okay. Back up, hook him on. I don't know how long he would have stayed there, but he'd stand right there. I'd say, get up, Baldy. Something was happening. Either that log was going, or a chain was breaking, or a tug was breaking. Wow. But I've seen him get right down to a log. I remember the log got caught on a root, as it going the root going out, and so he couldn't pull it. He's right down on his knees, his front knees. I said, whoa, Baldy. Oh, okay, you want me to stop? All right. But he, so I used him for 2 or 3 years.
When you're going to school, elementary, middle, and high school, and you're also on the farm, how did you have enough hours in the day to accomplish what you needed to do on the farm? I'm making the assumption that you're working on the farm.
Yeah,
constantly.
But I did chores, and I helped haying and sugaring and everything. But by the time I'm going to high school, it was keeping the wood boxes full, cleaning out the gutters, and I didn't say that word again, and maybe feeding the calves and that kind of thing. I pitched a lot of silage out of the silo. Mm-hmm. One of the silos, thinking of a Plymouth connection, one of those silos is down at Common Man right off 93, Playstyle? No, where the heck is it? Just south of Manchester, anyway. The Common Man that's down there. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Alex bought it from our farm when he was putting up that thing and came up. I found out from him this last summer. I met him at the restaurant one day that they arranged a price. And he sold my brother Francis, who owned the farm, but that said, so I'll give you half of it now when I take it down. And if I do put it up, I'll give you the other half. So that was the deal, and he ended up putting it up. And the silo is still there. He was hoping to put a couple floors in it, I think, and have seating in there. But then he realized he was going to have an outside fire escape, and he didn't want to screw up the look of the silo. So they basically keep wood in it now. At least I haven't seen it for years. But
this is when you go by the highway, you can see it immediately.
If you go south on 93, you're in. It's the last town, or next to last town. It's not Playstyle. Well, anyway, it's the Common Man. That's right.
Okay.
Right there at exit. I think it's between exits 2 and 3. Anyway.
So the audience will look next time to drive by.
Well, that's it. Whenever we took field trips to Boston, we'd get at the exit before it. Eyes left.
Wow.
So but it was. Orford High School was fine. It was some of us went to UVM, went to UNH, that kind of thing. But it wasn't. I don't ever remember having much homework or anything like that. Not what I gave a lot of my kids.
Thinking of mom and dad, if you don't mind, think it through. If I asked you to say a couple of sentences about your father and mother, what might they be? What did you learn from your mother and your father?
Well, my mother was certainly interested in history and reading. She had been born in Wentworth on Atwell Hill, about maybe 2 miles from the farm, and so that would be something. She was a pretty calm person, and wouldn't have said if she had a mouthful, but was just. And always was a homemaker, always was a person there on the farm. Dad was much more outgoing, and Dad was a square dance caller for a long time, for probably 35, 40 years. Called it, I bet some people might remember going to the Painted Barn in the 50s and 60s up in, the barn's gone, but just north of the Rumney line in Wentworth. He also called in Warren for a lot. He basically called with Pat McIsaac's band. Now, Pat lived in town here for a long time, just up off Highland Avenue. Dad was also an Orford selectman for 39 years, and a school board member for a while, And
Giving back, community.
so I think with him again, it was being involved in the community, and I'm not quite sure how he got involved, but was interested. The one interesting story said one time he was maybe his first year as selectman, and probably was at a town meeting. Somebody asked him about something, and he said, "Well, I think." Well, after that, the other selectman said, "When you say something, make sure you know, not that you think."
Whoa, whoa.
I mean,
Wow.
and so I come from pretty long-lived stock. My maternal grandparents were both, I think, in their 70s when they died, in the 1930s and 1950s. My grandfather Pease died at 62, but my grandmother was 88. Dad was 83. Ma was 102. My three older brothers were all between 85 and 90 when they died.
So what should we assume will happen?
Well, I'm afraid it's going to be a while. I'm 70. Well, I'll be 79 this fall.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, I mean that was, as I don't think I would have admitted it at the time, but there's not much question that I was a little spoiled. See, we had the farm we lived on again had been in the family, and by the time I came along, Dad was the seventh of the family, the last, 6 older sisters. And so the farm was kind of it was the family place. It was, I bet, at least half, if not 2/3 of a Sunday, there were some family members at the farm. And as I into the 50s and 60s, some of the aunts stayed there. They and their husbands would stay for weeks at a time, or they tended to live longer than their husbands, and they would stay with us. My Aunt Edna lived with us for several years, right around. And so I grew up around. My grandmother was there. I was been 10 or 11 when she died. And so I, knew her right from the beginning. Yeah. And she, the things I think I remember, I've realized that things you think you remember, it's because people told you those things happened. But anyway, my Grammy had cataracts, and so she had the talking books for the blind. Well, at that point, they were on a record player. And just to have a record player in the house was pretty cool. But she got these talking books.
We should ask our audience. Some of the people watching may not know what a record player is.
Turns these big things.
That's right.
Like a CD, only bigger. So she had this record player. It was on loan through the state library. And she'd get these talking books, they called them, like the CDs today or whatever. And I can vaguely remember going in and sitting and listening to that. I'm sure those things were old romance novels or something. I had no more idea what was going on. But 3-4 years old, it was cool to sit and listen to that. And then we used to play school. I don't have any real memories of it.
Oh, I do.
But, that was... So we were, it was the family often came there. And particularly Thanksgiving and Christmas, there were some family members around and some of the aunts. And the one, Dad was as I say, was the youngest. My youngest aunt was born in 1902 and Dad in 1906. And I've got a lot of family diaries. I've got about 100.
Gosh, why so many? Everybody.
Well, they kept them. And the thing that's interesting to me is our house burned in 1957, but by gosh, they saved those diaries.
And I've had some people share diaries with me so I could do some historical work. And yes, it is personal, but all of a sudden you'd say, we went to the grocery store today and we got this and this and this and this, and it came to $2.10.
Oh yeah, there's some of that. I have some of that. Not too much. Dads and grandpas tend to be more the Jack Webb version, just the facts, ma'am. Whereas Ma would tend to write more. Ma would write about what Dad and Gerald were doing, other were doing, plus what she was doing. So, for example, I've got some years I've gone through one year and made a list of all the pies she made. I think I came up to 120 or 30. What she did for the flowers she raised or stuff like that. But so anyway, Aunt Doris born 1902. Well, in Grandpa's diary that year, he says on a Saturday, Mabel had a kid or something like that. And I used the word kid, I think. On Sunday, he said, everybody was here to see the kid. Well, this is the 6th girl. I'm sure Grandpa's got to be thinking, can't we have a boy and we got a farm here?
Whoa.
Well, 4 years later, Dad comes along. I don't have his diary for that year. I would assume he may be a little happier. But my aunts have told me that Grandpa never let them go out and work in the field or help. And a couple of aunts were big bone women, and I didn't know. I said, we could have helped a lot, but no, sir, he wasn't having that. They weren't going to go out and help in the field.
Wow. I typically ask the question. I'd like to ask you about a potpourri of things. So if you're ready, we can pass them.
Yep.
But I like to talk about the weather. What memories do you have about the weather that took place around you? Something that was extraordinary? Can you think of? Because of where I lived, I had to worry about the floods for several years.
We didn't have, and we were on the east side of Mount Cube, right off Route 25A. I mean, the farm is right on 25A. I don't think of anything in particular. We did have something that most people would not remember, a whole line of snow fence down through the field below us, because the wind would blow across there and would fill in the road as it went down the hill a little bit. And so the snow fence up in the field would catch some of the wind and keep it from filling in the road. I can remember seeing that snow fence up, but I don't think of anything else in particular. Thunderstorms, we had hay got wet and you had to shake it out again. But I mean, other than that, I don't. The one other weather thing I would mention, as I said, Dad logged most winters, and one year, in his diary, he usually put the temperature, which would be, I think, probably the temperature when he got up in the morning. Well, this one day, I remember 20 below. Went out and logged that day.
Wow.
And just did that, it's when you went.
How about fires? If I said to you fires,
well,
anything come out?
I'll condense this because I say our house burned in 1957. And we did save most everything in the end. That's why I've got those diaries. I've got other stuff. The thing that I've always remembered not saving, that was a year and a half, 2 years after I got out of fourth grade. In fourth grade, my fourth grade teacher, who knew I was really interested in history, had retired. She gave me a box of stuff. I don't know what was in it. I don't know. I'm thinking it probably was bulletin board material, things that she'd used. So I know right where it was in the closet, up on a shelf, and that didn't get saved. And as a kid, that was the thing that I missed the most, was not having that.
Wow.
And of course, it didn't make any sense to me at the time, though she gave me this book that she had edited about Lebanon history. Of course, that didn't mean anything to me then until 15 years later. But yeah, and it was one of those great stories. House burn. Within the next day, people were there starting to help clean it up, and we end up building the house that's there now, pretty much right on the same spot. Mel Thompson helped to organize people to come and do that. So we had people come and help with that. Dad had known Bob Monahan, the Dartmouth forester, through supervisory union stuff. Bob got Dartmouth to give whatever lumber we wanted to cut. So we cut something like 25,000 feet of lumber up on the side of Mount Cube. I say we did. Several Saturdays, people came and did the cutting. Other people took it. I think most of it went to Ken Whicher's mill, and I don't know if he charged at all. If anything, just maybe his the minimum, and help put it up. Once we got it up with wiring, a cousin said, you get the wire, and he was an electrician. I'll put it in for you. So it was all that kind of.
What a community! What a community!
Yeah. And actually, the next year, the house next to us burned, the farmhouse next to us, and there was a similar kind of.
Then let me come backwards. Why did yours burn?
Oh, we know why it burned. Ma and I were down at my brother Gerald's. He and Doris had gone to the movies, and the kids were. This was in September 5th, 57, early September. Dad was out to a selectmen's meeting. Aunt Della was there alone, and she was 60-ish at the time, maybe a little more, kind of lame. And she thought she was sitting in the kitchen, thought she smelled something. Well, the house is basically like this. Here's the kitchen, here's the woodshed. Chimney's right here. She opened the door to the woodshed's full of smoke. So she knew something. She called on the phone and party phone, but somebody heard, we'll be right up, Della. She went in the bedroom, to get her pocketbook. Wouldn't have been moving very fast. Time she's back out in the kitchen to go out the door, the fire had broken through on the baseboard. A chimney fire, no question. That's what it was.
And that was probably more commonplace.
Yes.
That we don't hear of that very often anymore.
I mean, I've seen at least twice in diaries where they had fires in that chimney before then. Yep.
Wow, that's kind of scary. Did you have any fairs? Of course, we had the Plymouth Fair, but did you have
we used to come to Plymouth Fair, but that's really all. I don't remember going to any other fairs around. I do remember a little bit of it going to Plymouth Fair, and I don't think this was me, but the story was when like the three older brothers, something about they came to the fair with Dad, and something said about him keeping track of them. He said, no, they need to keep track of me. But the thing, I remember two things from Plymouth Fair. One of them was the silo with the motorcycles. Where the motorcycles go around, inside the silo, get started up and go around. And the other one was the ladies outside. I think once at least I was brought in to watch. I don't remember anything about it, but watching to watch a show.
Okay. If you need more information on that, we will get back to you. But I do remember them going through the motorcycles.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're looking down.
You're looking down on it, and they're rattling the inside of a big silo.
That is neat. That is neat. Let me ask you about Plymouth, or even your town. What changes have you seen taken place over the years?
Oh gosh, more. I mean, I didn't know Plymouth well, but Orford is very much a bedroom town. Okay. It was to some extent then, but a bedroom town for Hanover and for Hitchcock and whatever, and retirees. Whereas it wasn't. There were a few farms. Our farm. There was Franklin's. There was Lufkin's. There was Dennis's. There were probably 10 or 12 farms that were sending milk in the 50s, and of course that's the only farm sends milk now is Tolando.
One.
And that's
one.
Yeah. And now they milk around 500 head. But they're not all that big anymore, compared to other places. They've really built that up. They started that. George and Barbara bought that farm in '56, and I worked there a few summers when I was in college. And I tell them now, I said, that white barn I thought was a big barn compared to their barns there now.
Wow.
And they're very modern. There's a third. Let's see, George and Barbara's grandson really runs it now, and they have robot milkers. They have, just very modern, up to date. And
where does the milk go? Does it go to one large company?
Oh yeah, I don't know if they sell the Cabot. I'm not sure. We sold the Cabot for a while. I don't know if they do or not. But yeah, all those places. Are more
people? Do they want raw milk? Do they want?
Well, there is some now. For example, just north of the Orford line, the Roby Farm, and some people would perhaps recognize because they sell meat and stuff around. And Lee was 2 years younger than I was in high school, but they sell raw milk. And I think I'm trying to remember if McNamara's in Plainfield sell raw milk. No, I don't think so. They sell milk, but I think it's all pasteurized and homogenized. But.
Thinking backwards, I'm switching a lot.
Yeah.
Thinking backwards, were there people in your family or people in the town that affected you? You now look backwards and say, I learned so much from them. I enjoyed being with them.
Well, more from school, because around me more was family. My social studies teacher, Phil Gimino, would have been someone that I looked up to and enjoyed it because he was a history teacher and whatever. And my high school principal, Dick Hamilton, and Dick helped me get into college in the sense that he was pushing me. I say pushing. What he was trying to do was get me a free college education. So he was looking to get me into. I applied for Naval ROTC and for West Point. Well, I got what am I going to say? I got interview and a physical for both of those. Problem was, in the summer before my senior year, I was playing soccer at Camp Moosilauke and broke my leg. And so I had a cast on until the middle of January. And I think it was for the Naval ROTC that I went to. I went to Naval ROTC. I came to Boston once, rode down and back on milk trucks, went right by the house. So Horton Washburn was driving. He took me down and took me to the principal's, left me off, and the principal's father met me. Brought me in Boston back. A couple days later, took me back, and I came back up. The milk truck went right by the farm. So, and then I went to Devon's once for a physical for the West Point stuff. And they kind of told me to, come back when I wasn't on crutches. And as I think back on it, and I'm sure Dick, this is 63-4. People getting out of ROTC or West Point in 1968. Think about what that meant. You were a second lieutenant. You were going to Vietnam.
Okay. Wow. Wow.
Very likely. I didn't have, and again, 60s Vietnam was nothing. Yeah, early 60s. Nobody knew anything about it.
Interesting. Were you in the service?
No, I didn't go.
Did you know people that went?
Well,
into the
I
service?
knew, I had a few friends from high school. Only one I really knew at the time was in the service. I found out since 3 or 4 others that were in Vietnam. Now my oldest brother was in the Army for 2 years and spent a lot of that in Germany. And my youngest brother, 13 years older than I was a career Air Force man. He was a mechanic, first on B-36s and then B-52s.
Wow, that's pretty neat.
So and then he came back and then helped to run the farm.
And they got a chance to travel during the
Yeah,
military?
although Francis was they traveled around the country. He was in Guam 2 separate occasions.
Wow, that's neat. That's neat.
We want to be sure to talk a little bit about Plymouth. I know this.
We will. Yeah, what are some of your memories of Plymouth?
Well, it's not the reason I got into this business of looking through the Plymouth record, which I started in the 1880s on microfilm.
I think you're right.
Down at New Hampshire State Library. Okay. And I'm up to 1968 now. And the reason I started looking at the record is that one of my aunts, Aunt Vernie Burnham, Vernie Naaman Burnham, lived in West Rumney from, I think, about 1920-ish on. They were on the old road there in West Rumney. They had 6 kids, and all those kids lived in either Warren, Rumney, West Rumney, Plymouth. So Richard and Dot Burnham ran the store in Warren for a long time, Burnham's Market. Guy Burnham, who was a mechanic and then a car salesman in this area. They lived right at the top of the hill in West Rumney. His widow, I'm pretty sure Ginny still lives there. Francis Burnham was a trapper. A lot of people might have known him. They met Roger, his son, is a trapper. Lived right in town. Let's see, Wesley and Betty Glover lived in West Plymouth. West was a contractor. Marjorie married Vern Perkins. They lived right down next to the railroad track in West Rumney. And then the other Plymouth was the youngest one, Hazel married Billy Carpenter over on Cookville Road.
Cooksville Road. There's an S there, I think, isn't there?
I think there is.
I think there is.
So that's how I got started looking, and then I began to see stuff for other people. And so gradually, I now have a list of about 30 people from Wentworth, an email list. 30 from Wentworth, 35 Wentworth, 30 Warren, 15 or so Rumney, 15 or so Plymouth, some separate Plymouth State ones that I find these little items from. Basically, it's family connected of mine. So Plymouth, I look for Walkers because Natalie Walker married John Moses, who was my oldest daughter-in-law's parents. I look for now McCormick's. I look for Samahas.
Okay, thank you.
I look for Rands.
Thank you.
So that same and the same thing in Rumney. I mean, again, pretty much Burnham's.
But your list is ever growing.
Oh yeah, because people will, particularly Richie Pike and Warren, every few months I was talking to so and so. The last one was Gregor Anderson from Rumney. And he says, I'm talking to Gregor. I tell him, he'd like to be on your list. So I put him on the list. And so most of them are from people like that.
So how many years years?
I've been doing that for 10 years, maybe 10 years, something like that. I think I'll probably go I'll certainly go up into the 70s with Plymouth. I'm not sure how much longer I'll go beyond that. I don't know how much longer it's on microfilm, whether it's right up through or not. I know now and it's interesting, from I think it's 1920 to 26, there aren't any Plymouth records on microfilm at the State Library. Now, whether they're anywhere, I would imagine if they're available, they'd have them there, but they don't. And then some others, you get gap. Other than that, there really aren't many gaps. So I'll keep doing that.
So you're a local historian.
Well, in a sense, yeah. Although people like to comment, I've done a lot. I've done programs for Orford and that kind of thing, and they keep asking when I'm going to write a book. I'm not writing a book. That's work.
Oh,
It's fun what I do.
but in order to write a book, you have to deal
Oh,
with
you'd have to start and get all that stuff. Yeah,
that's so
I
much
got a lot of
fun.
this. I said, hey, read those things I send around. I've got about 130 orphan people on my list. So
Wow.
another 70, 11.
Wow. So we should do we do a plea here? If you're interested, contact
if you want to be on any of those lists, just get me your email. You could get it through Louise, I'm sure, and I'd be glad to add you to my list.
I just think of you start out with family.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, that's what's happening with me anyway. And then you find out more about me occasionally, and all of a sudden you're talking about Plymouth State College. That's what I picked that up from you in the beginning, half an hour ago.
Well, yes.
College, Plymouth State University place.
Well, it
I
was
know.
Plymouth State College then. Well, see, when I started, it was PNS.
No way.
Plymouth Normal School.
Normal school.
It's in the 70s, of course.
Oh.
1870s.
1870s.
See, they started in 71.
1871. I think you might be right.
Yeah, the first. I'm pretty sure that it was the first. It was the first normal school in New Hampshire. Keene was like 1909.
The first one in the country was in Vermont, so it's close to us. But I was
Yeah, that
always
was
impressed.
my mother, because my mother's family came from Concord, Vermont.
Oh my, oh my. I don't know the town that it started
I don't
in.
much about it
That would
either.
be fun. But I was excited to hear quite a while ago that Plymouth was the very first one in this state.
Yeah.
And they've always enjoyed and felt the upper, that education was important.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why Plymouth State ended up being here versus someplace else.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Well, the other connection to Plymouth that I found as I was talking, the only thing I knew about, I didn't know it was connected to Plymouth,
Oh, here we go.
was this thing.
Okay.
This is a sap gathering pail, not the pail that goes on the tree, but to gather sap in. And so you can see you'd dump the into sap into here, and when you wanted to dump it out, you'd do it like this. And you also want to notice those little knobs on there to set it off the ground. Well, as a kid, I was always told we have two of those. That this was made by my great uncle Ren, Lorenzo Pease. I didn't know anything about him. I have since found out that he worked for Gould before 1908, who sold to A.M. Rand. And then Uncle Ren worked for Rand. And Uncle Ren was a tinsmith and a plumber. This is English tin. So now I don't have any question what he made these two from my father, probably 1915, 1920.
Wow.
When Dad was a kid. I never used them to gather sap with. I used them to go to the brook and get water with.
For the house?
No, for the sugar place.
Thank you.
I mean, for the sugar place. But so it's just kind of thing. Let's say we have two of them.
I love the handle.
Yeah?
It's
Oh, yeah.
this side. I'm not sure I can get my hand in.
Well, you don't have. You just put your fingers in.
Okay.
And you're gonna have gloves on anyway. So I mean, in wintertime, you're not going out like this.
Thanks. That's neat. That's special.
The other, and so I've since found a little bit I found items about Uncle Rand working for Rand, and one time he was in Canaan doing a heating job. I presume putting together the heating ducts. I mean, you didn't go down to the hardware store and buy them at that point. You melded put the tin together, or the metal, whatever it was. He married a woman from Meredith, I think it is, Belle Prescott. Again, no, but obviously they died long before I was
Yeah,
born.
Prescott Lumber.
Well, I don't know. I might try to find out at some point.
That might be interesting.
The other thing that's interesting about my connection to Plymouth, well, a couple of things. A family connection, the Sherbans. Orrin Sherban was my Grammy Mabel's brother. And Orrin lived in Plymouth most of his life. He worked for a Webster and something store, and he used to do some delivering. And his son Harold was a postman in Plymouth for 30 or 40 years. There was just a little profile of Harold that I sent around probably last week or week before. Harold's wife, Vina, I think it was Lavinia, but was Vina, was very involved in the Congregational Church. You see her name all the time. And their son, Harold Jr., also lived in Plymouth, I think. Harold and Vina lived in, I think, that little brick house that's right at the traffic circle as you're going towards Rumney. As you're going around the right, there's a small brick house with a couple of L's now. I'm pretty sure that's where Harold lived.
Wouldn't it be interesting to go back? Think about how often these people, even Rumney, how close it appears to be to Plymouth, how often they got to Plymouth. How did it get to Plymouth?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Decades and decades ago.
Oh, sure. Well, they took the hoss.
You got it.
Well, I mean, my looking at the diaries, at my grandfather's diaries, they came back to the farm in 1899. They more often went to Wentworth. There were a couple stores there, and that was 5 miles. Going out to the street was 10 miles. They went out to the Ville to vote, and that's about the only time that Grandpa talks about going out to the street. They were right to Wentworth. Also, of course, the train was in Fairleigh, just across the river from Orford, but the train in Wentworth. Wow. And that's where they would go. And the family story was one of these things that you wished you'd asked more about it. That Dad had planned on going to high school in Woodsville, because his Aunt Gladys and Uncle Tom lived there, and he would have stayed with them at least through the week. Well, about the time he got out of 8th grade, his father began to have health problems, and so he didn't go to school, and they took over the farm. But I'm sure he would have just come down and gotten on the train and gone up to on a Monday morning or a Sunday night, and then come back and.
I think we've had 2 or 3 people over the years that have said they took the train. Some lived in Vermont, but took the train to Plymouth probably to Plymouth Teachers College at that time.
Oh yeah. Oh, you could. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And I mean, I had my Aunt Edna lived and Uncle Vern lived in Wentworth for a while. He was one of the victims of the 1919 flu. He was a hardy, man, good shape, worked on the railroad. Based on his obituary and items in the paper, one week it says, Vern Pease is ill or something. Next week he's died. And that was typical. Young, healthy people, within 2 or 3 days they were dead. And she ended up then later living in Plymouth. Her children, Roger and Helen McIntyre, grew up in Plymouth. Helen was on the undefeated high school girls basketball team, 31 and 32.
I was just going to ask you the date. That's pretty neat.
I haven't got any pictures of that team or anything from the paper, but I knew Helen. Ruth was the daughter. I knew Ruth well, and then I knew Roger, her brother. Roger married first he married a woman named Hosmer from Plymouth. She died within a year, either in childbirth or very soon after, and the child died. And then a few years later, he married a woman named Helen Fleming from Ashland, and they ended up living in Newport, the rest of their life. So there were some of those other family connections. But the other connection is that the Beals, B-E-A-L, no E, the Beals came to Orford before the Civil War, and had little small factories on the little stream that runs through Orfordville. You wouldn't think you could do anything with it, but they did. And they end up having a chair factory and a mattress factory. And from anything I can see, they invented a mattress machine, one that stuffed mattresses. And we've got some pictures, and we're hoping to coordinate that at some point with this. So they had the mattress factory from the 1890s up through, and then within the space of 3-4 years, they had 2 fires. So at that point, I think that was part of it. They moved to Plymouth in 04 or 05. And had one of the pictures said Beal Mattress Factory. It's down the south end of the railroad yard. I think beyond the depot, beyond the senior citizens place now. I don't know if the building's still there or not. And I've got a couple pictures of the mattress making machine. One of them you can see the
mattress.
The mattress and being filled, and the filling. And the other one's just the machine itself. Yeah. So they were here from up until around 1915, I think, and then they moved to Malden, Mass.
Malden, Mass.
Well, there's some family connections there. I can't think how. Okay. Frank Beal was very involved in the town. He had an orchestra, and I've seen 2 or 3 ads or things Beal's orchestra was playing. Okay. He was I think he was a county commissioner one term. No, he wasn't county. He was New Hampshire Fish and Game Commissioner for one term, maybe something like that. And then, let's say, they ended up moving to Malden. And you'll see, little items. I don't know if they ever came up here, but he had a sister or an aunt who was apparently quite a musician. Every summer, she'd go to Germany and do concerts and teaching. Nellie Beal Morey. I just saw an ad the other day for this is the 1920s. She was giving a concert. And it was a big deal. This big ad in the paper, and not in Plymouth, but I haven't seen that. But
I want to go backwards to what you've been doing for us, and I think many people that are on your email list need to thank you seriously. Although you had family interests probably in the beginning.
That's where I started with.
Oh my gosh, it's been just amazing.
Yeah. So if you look at you look at the stuff. I mean, Rumney, you wouldn't think anybody lived in Rumney but Burnhams and Perkinses. Because if you look at the West Rumney News, if there are 6 items, 3 are at least 3 are Burnham and Perkins. So you got to understand that. This is even before Aunt Vernie was doing the items. She did the items for probably 20 years. But that's really Burnham, Perkins, Glover, Carpenter, and then again have expanded out a bit as I find other families' connections.
It's been amazing. Yeah. It's really, hopefully it'll excite other people to just do the same thing that you've been doing with your family.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know do you have the Plymouth Record on microfilm here? Does the library have it, I bet?
I think they probably will say yes, but I'm not, I said probably. I want to make sure. So,
I mean, if you know if you got somewhere near a date, just look through the record. There's an amazing amount of stuff. I mean, I also, stuff in the record, I get school stuff, sports stuff, some of the school. If the school's had a really good season, I'll try to do all that. Sometimes it's so darn much I don't want to do it if they've got a great season.
Sometimes, way back when, let's see, my aunt, I'm making this up now, my Aunt Millie came to visit Uncle Roe. It was so personal.
Oh, that's what a lot of it is.
So personal way back when. We don't see much of that anymore.
That's what most of the West Rumney stuff. It's who came to visit Eamon and Vernie. And again, with the 6 kids all around, often it's kids. And say the Perkinses, either some of Vernon's family from Lyme and Heartland are visiting, or he's visiting them.
There we go. There we go.
And I said that was my experience growing up too in Orford. Same kind of thing. So, but you'll find, I look for other interesting stuff. I keep track. Like in '68, the AREA school, Plymouth, Campton, Holderness, was finally approved. And there's quite a lot about that. Rumney. But then Rumney, even to last minute, wants to back out. And I'll find out the next time I go to Concord. I know they didn't get out of it because they end up staying with it. So things about school buildings in Plymouth. And every once in a while you'd see, for the college, the state thinking, well, we don't need maybe we just need 1. We don't need 2. And maybe we don't need that one. And so the budget, and I think it was 63 or 4, was quite a budget cut proposed. I don't know what happened with it, but there was a lot. And so Dr. Hyde had letters about, this is what we would have to cut if we cut it, and that kind of thing.
Me, being a person who lived on the main street for several decades, my interest was on this spot. Who was here first, second, third? I mean, there's a couple stores in town, my family being one of them, that was the only owners. They were the only owners, my family.
Yeah.
And let's see, the furniture store, the Steinmans, now Lorry Boys. But if you go to the rest of the town, we've had many businesses on this spot. And I'm always interested, why did they come, or why did they start a building? Who was here first, second, third, fourth?
I usually try to do something with Plymouth if it's a whole block, if it's a fire or something. I don't necessarily do all of the small stores, but I do quite a few. I can remember when Guinan's first showed up. And
how many places were they? How many places can you do this, people? 6 different places over their many years.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. I think that's what Michael told me. One, his father may have moved back into it, so they were in one spot twice.
Okay, yeah.
It's amazing. It's fun.
So you see, and if I know it's an old place in town, I'll try to look for it.
That's neat.
So names that I begin to be familiar with. Sometimes, I knew Bill Batchelder when he was a Supreme Court justice because I was involved in law-related education, and Bill was very supportive of that. So I got to know him a little bit.
Nice.
And so I found a few articles about Bill Batchelder, and I put those in.
Oh, that's
because
neat.
I knew him. That's more. It ends up being pretty personal, but I try to go. I go beyond, particularly with Plymouth, with some stuff or with.
I just think people are trying to say thank you for what you're doing. You're saving some history, be it personal, family, or.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful. We're getting a little bit short on time. What have we forgotten today?
Well, let me mention one more thing when talking about this sources. There's an outfit on the internet called newspapers.com.
News.
And they have, I think, easily thousands, if not tens of thousands of newspapers that they have digitized. Now, it costs you like $150 a year for a subscription or $80 for 6 months. But they have a great search program. The Record isn't on, which it was, but the Monitor is, Portsmouth Herald, Peterborough paper. They don't have the Manchester Union. Boy, that would be, I don't know whether they'll ever do that. That's so big. These are mostly weekly papers. But they've got, a couple papers. They've got the Valley News on now from Lebanon, from 52 right up to 22. Bradford Opinion, Littleton Courier, a paper that was the precursor to the Valley News. And the thing with newspapers.com, it's got a great search engine. Easy to search.
I can do it.
And it's interesting what you'll find if you're looking for something specific. That's a good thing to do.
I'm thinking of businesses, and when I started searching years ago, I went for the ads.
Oh yeah.
100 years ago, if I could find the ads of some of these places, it started me moving forward.
Well, I always look for ads for Rand and Samaha. Rand had a lot more than Samaha.
They did a lot.
Yeah.
I noticed my family went up to a certain year, and then I didn't
Not
see
hardly
much.
any. Yeah. And now Rand, I think, is 68. They ran one ad for years. It was for their propane business. A little ad. But in 68, that might have been the only one for a few months. They didn't do as much in the 60s. They didn't have as much. In the 40s and 50s, there'd be 10, 15 ads in a 3 or 4 month time period.
Interesting. Why?
Well, I mean, now they would do it at Christmas time. There'd always be a couple big ads Christmas time for Rand, even when they weren't doing as many of the others.
Interesting. And that's part of our history. If we can find those ads and put them together.
Oh yeah.
It can share a lot.
Yeah.
Who were the owners then, maybe?
Sure.
You don't see that today as much, but I think then you knew who the owners were.
Yeah. Yeah.
This has been a pleasure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's
Seriously.
always fun.
Yeah, it was fun. If you have any questions, should we give them? Do I dare say?
I don't mind. If you want
Okay.
my email. My email address is Pease, my last name, Pease, 347 at gmail.com. I'm happy to. I always say when people say they get too much spam mail, I say, you got a thumb and a finger, haven't you? Press delete.
But I think the history has been amazing for us. I'm, interested maybe in my family, yet at the same time, what I've learned about other families, in this case, stores on the main street, has been wonderful.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for doing it from the audience.
Sure.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Okay.
I can always gab.
Ooh, okay, I get to shake your hands twice. Thank you, sir.
Over and out.